Now on 5, extraordinary people meets a true inspiration, a man with a huge ambition. This is the fastest man on no legs.
"21 years ago, a boy called Oscar was born with a rare condition that meant his feet were severely deformed. His parents faced a terrible choice: watch him grow up unable to walk, or amputate in the hope of a better future with artificial legs.
To cut those feet off and throw it in the dustbin was not a nice feeling.
But Oscar Pistorius would grow up not just able to walk, but to become one of the world's fastest athletes, faster than any other disabled runner that's ever lived. And still, he wants more. He wants to be the fastest man in the world, with or without legs, and compete in the Olympics. But now his dream is under threat.
They say the Paralympics exist for people like you.
It does exist for people like me, but I think if I can cross the boundary, why not?
Critics say he should not be allowed to compete against able-bodied runners. This film follows Oscar over a year that could change his life. Is Oscar a truly extraordinary athlete? Or do his prosthetic legs give him an unfair advantage? It's November 2007. A racetrack in Germany is being prepared, not for a race, but for a unique scientific investigation. Oscar Pistorius has been running for just 4 years. But in disabled sport at least, he's already achieved everything he could hope for.
I haven't lost a 200-meter race ever. The only way that I can get better, the only way that I see myself, bettering my times and running on a competitive field at the moment with the international able-bodied athletes.
No amputee has ever been fast enough to even think of running in able-bodied competitions before. But this is the problem for Oscar. His determination to do so has turned the world of athletics upside down. Now the authorities have to decide what gives Oscar his speed, his prosthetic running blades, or a remarkable natural talent.
So what I'll do is I'll count back 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything looks good. All systems clear.
Oscar's taking a huge risk. If the tests prove the blades give him a significant advantage, it would devalue his outstanding achievements so far, and perhaps rob him of his future as a professional athlete.
Okay, whenever you are so far.
Okay, I'm ready when you are.
Okay.
But if the tests show the blades to be a disadvantage, that would make him one of the greatest athletes who ever lived. Why is Oscar so determined to put himself through this ordeal? Perhaps the answer lies in his background in Pretoria, South Africa.
I've got 3 pairs of prosthetics that I use and about 15 pairs that I've tried out and that I have lying around. I've got these pair that are everyday walking prosthetics. They do look very battered because I've been motorbike riding and stuff with them. This one's even got a burn from the exhaust, I think.
Do you think of yourself as disabled?
No, I don't think. I think because I might have 1 or 2 disabilities, I've got a million of other abilities. I don't think I should let the disability that I have overshadow the abilities that I have.
When I think of Oscar, I don't think of disability at all. I mean, Oscar is the type of person that can do anything, and he will do everything that he thinks about or puts his mind to. There's nothing disabled about him.
According to his brother, Oscar has never allowed his disability to hold him back.
Being so close at age, you want to do stuff together. We had a lot of adventures together, from the sandpit to bike racing to the tree house, running on the beach, having races on the sand. You've always had someone to spur you on. In fact, he's probably more adventurous than half of my friends.
Being so competitive, it gives him a lot of drive, and he really hates losing. I don't think he sees any limits for himself.
Oscar's competitive relationship with his able-bodied brother has pushed him to do things that could seem out of reach to someone with no legs.
You can actually take your legs off. Take your leg off. I wonder if this is an advantage.
Just don't break his foot.
Pull that thing back.
Despite the obvious difficulties, he's determined to get on the water.
Are you ready?
In the end, his rigid prosthetics make wakeboarding impossible. But he's not prepared to give up easily.
And we can do it, Oscar.
Knees up, hey? Like you're sitting on your bum. Okay. Whoa.
Oscar's competitive nature goes some way to explaining his success. But all athletes have to be competitive. What's intriguing about Oscar is the possibility that it's his disability itself that makes him such an extraordinary athlete.
Hey, right, come, knee action. Come on, 6, 7, 8. Good. That's great.
Oscar Pistorius is the fastest Paralympic athlete ever to have lived. Now he wants to do what no disabled man has done before: to run at the able-bodied Olympics.
But we need to work on the start. You start too slow, huh? That's where the 1 second is gone. This guy is special. Just believe me. It will never happen again for a guy to run in an Olympic able-bodied final without legs.
But Oscar could do it.
He can do it, yeah. Come. Pull.
Oscar is freaking fast. It's crazy.
Pull.
One of those guys just gets quicker and quicker throughout the race. It's normally quite scary, because he pulls away slowly and then you just hear those blades coming from behind you. And then afterwards the noise sort of fades because he's about 20 yards ahead of you.
So how can a man without legs be so fast? Could it be that Oscar's rare birth defect has uniquely equipped him for speed?
I saw it when he was born. Neither the nurse nor the doctor saw it. And I held him when his umbilical cord was cut, and I told the doctor there was something different about his feet.
Oscar's condition is very, very rare. The fibula was missing, and the whole lateral side of his foot was also missing. In other words, what he had was 2 toes and the bones on the inside of his foot and a heel. The debate was whether to reconstruct or whether to amputate. For parents to make the decision to amputate their child's feet is a hugely emotional thing. And not only that, but what we believe is that the amputation should be done before the child is walking, so that the child, in fact, never has the idea of walking on feet.
Oscar was very ticklish. Now, to cut those feet off and throw it in the dustbin was not a nice feeling. It's hard. And what about if that guy's 21 one day and he said to you, who gave you the right to have my feet amputated?
The foot was taken off at the ankle, what you need to do, in fact, is to place weight-bearing skin under the stump. And in this particular instance, we took the heel pad, so we shelled out the heel and put that pad over the end of the stump. But by doing that, Oscar has got a weight-bearing stump, and he can walk without a prosthesis, and I've certainly seen him running on the beach at Mshlanga Rocks.
His miraculous recovery after that, the speed with which he grew into these little prosthesis that had no feet, just like Captain Hook. He was running all the time. He never walked. It's as if he couldn't walk.
There was never a time that I sat down with him and was like, you know, what happened to my legs, or, you know, why don't I have legs, or anything like that. I mean, if anything, there are a lot of advantages that I can think of. So, you know, I never twisted an ankle or anything like that, stubbed a toe. You know, whenever somebody stubs a toe or, you know, comes and they're like, oh, they've got a sore ankle or whatever, it's nothing that I ever felt.
Oscar grew up trying to fit into the able-bodied world of his brother and friends. But he had to work his short stumps harder to keep up. In doing this, he was developing a unique athletic physique without even knowing.
His leg movement had to be so much faster to actually get up to the same pace as anybody else, whether it was me or one of his friends that he might have been playing with in the garden or racing against on the beach. So he's developed a very natural, fast leg movement, which is obviously counted in his favour.
The first day I saw him run, I thought, hey, I can work with this. You know why? As a sprint coach, I saw his leg speed.
When it comes to speed, especially sprinting, your arms, your upper body works just as hard as your lower body.
When Oscar was a schoolboy, he almost benched 100 kilograms. So he was very strong for a sprinter. He's very strong upper body.
Obviously, being a little kid, we had a bunk bed, and all he had was, he didn't have feet to jump up. He's used his upper body, and he gets a lot of power from that.
The challenges of fitting into an able-bodied world had prepared Oscar for a life in athletics since the very day his feet were cut away. And the confidence with which he did so came from his parents.
My mum always said to us, the phrase "I can't" doesn't exist. And I think that's one of the things my parents really taught my brother, sister and I from a very young age. Helped me become the person that I am today.
In 1999, Oscar's mother spoke to local radio of her pride at her son's attitude to life and the way he fitted in at able-bodied school.
Oscar's my middle son. He's 14 years old now, and he was born with missing bones in the legs, and with God's help has gone from strength to strength. At primary school, he played soccer and tennis. He did wall climbing, abseiling, rollerblading, water skiing, ice skating, paddle skiing, you name it. He just did everything. And he's agile and a well-balanced teenager with a delightful sense of humor. He's a practical joker and not at all bitter.
But Sheila Pistorius has never seen her son's greatest achievements. Soon after the radio interview was recorded, and without warning, she died. Oscar was 15 years old.
She was a very warm, spontaneous, kind of wild person. And I think that spontaneity is something they deeply missed. But I think mostly Oscar dealt with it by being with his friends. And he didn't say much about it, really. I think Oscar's a person who is quite self-sufficient in a way. He does things on his own. I think he still is a bit like that.
My mum passed away before I started running, so in a way I wish she was still here to see it, but I've no doubt that she's obviously watching down from heaven, so things happen in life for a reason. Having had her in the lifetime that I did molded me into a person capable of achieving the things I am and being competitive. I was quite lucky for the time that I did get to spend with her.
When we have a trial or tribulation, it develops in us patience, endurance and maturity. So I certainly hope that this is a message of hope and encouragement to any of the listeners who've been through traumatic things in their lives.
When his mother died, Oscar had been at Pretoria Boys High, one of South Africa's top boarding schools, for just 6 weeks.
Going to boarding school was a bit of a challenge. I kind of had a lot to prove to myself that I could do things, when I was struggling a bit.
For the bereaved teenager, school became a second home.
It's nice.
Far from disengaging from school life, he threw himself into it. It's what his mother had always encouraged him to do.
How many are you? 24 in here? 22 guys sleep in this room, so it becomes pretty personal. Somebody thought it would be a great joke to put lighter fluid on the bed frame, and they took my legs away and they lit the bed frame. And they woke me up, they're like, "It's a fire, we need to get out of hospital." And I'm trying to search for these things so I can get up and run. And everybody just back up laughing. And then you realise, what a joke, after your heart skipped about 50,000 beats and you're in a cold sweat. But I mean, I honestly had such good times in this place. Really, we had so much fun. This is like old days.
To fit in at Pretoria Boys High School was to play sport. It became Oscar's greatest consolation.
2, 6, jump!
I think I tried every sport that you possibly could have had, except athletics, ironically. Athletics was never really one of those things that I enjoyed.
Give it 1, 2, 3, go!
If I wanted to do a sport and I struggled a bit in the beginning, I kind of just persevered and tried a bit harder.
The sport Oscar loved offered the greatest challenge for a boy without legs. The South African national game, rugby.
In the 1 or 2 games that it did happen that my prosthetic came off, I think it must have been really stressful for the guys, go in for a low tackle and you kind of like make a guy lose his leg, kind of feel a bit bad.
Oscar played rugby for the school reserve team, running on his normal rigid walking legs. But at 16, a fateful tackle forced him to stop playing and open the door to his career in athletics.
I treated Oscar for a knee injury, and he came to me and he said he had this knee injury, and I said, "Well, how did you get it?" So he said, "Well, I was playing rugby." Now you must remember that at that stage he was doing things without his blades. So Oscar was playing rugby with conventional prostheses. I was totally bowled over when he told me he'd been playing rugby. Totally amazing.
They said to me, if you're going to be ready for the rugby season next year, you're going to have to start athletics as a form of getting fit again. It was kind of like I had the option to go back into rugby in April, and I thought, I might as well stick to athletics for a couple of months extra, see if it works out for me. If it doesn't, I can always fall back to rugby.
Oscar was introduced to a different type of prosthetic, carbon fibre blades, specifically designed for running. It was as if he had been given wings, and the 17-year-old schoolboy took off.
It all just happened really fast, but it all kind of, did happen by accident.
Just 8 months after reluctantly taking up athletics, Oscar was representing his country at the Paralympics in Athens.
I had a French athlete on my outside that was grunting and spitting and stuff, and seriously, he's actually distracting me, which was probably exactly what he wanted to do. and I had a 14 times world champion on my inside, you know, so I was very uptight, very scared actually to be running against these two guys.
4 false starts did not help his nerves. He was, after all, just 17 years old. And when the gun went, he froze.
Being naive as I was, I thought that, you know, I kind of assumed that it was a false start, and I kind of just sat there and all the athletes went away and I waited for the second shot, which didn't come, and it was about 1.8 seconds later that I realized, you know, the gun is gone, we're not getting a second one.
It was a disastrous start, but that only made what happened next all the more remarkable. That day, Oscar smashed the first of a string of records.
Jeez, this feels like it was so long ago.
He looked so young on the podium, but a Paralympic star was born. And Oscar had made it look so easy. Three years later, and Oscar is now an icon to disabled people all over the world. But he sees no reason why he should be prevented from competing against able-bodied runners too.
I'd love to be #1 400-meter runner in South Africa. That's going to take a bit of, a lot harder work.
Yeah,
And then, I'll one day hopefully become one of the top athletes in the world. I'd be really happy about that.
It's March 2007, and Oscar has a year to prepare for the Beijing Olympics.
The preparation that we did leading into the season was brilliant. Yeah, I was fit, I was injury-free, my weight was right, everything laid out for me to perform. I'm pretty confident that by January, February next year I'll be in good shape.
His personal best is within a second of the time needed to qualify.
You have to run a 45 in order to go through the first round. And he will run a 45. That's a promise.
But the faster he runs, the more suspicious the athletics world becomes of his high-tech legs. Soon, Oscar will be fighting not just for acceptance, but for the right to run at all. Oscar Pistorius's competitive attitude and powerful physique have developed in an extraordinary way. But without these, he couldn't race. His carbon fiber blades, used by amputee runners for over a decade, are made by specialist engineers in Iceland.
They are very different from everyday prosthetics. The reason is because just like when we run, we go onto our toes to run, and that's very similar what we're trying to do with the J-shape. So they're more like in a running mode.
The J-shaped blade works like a bouncing spring by returning some of the energy put into it.
It sounded like something cracked, but...
The engineers are working with Oscar to maximize this energy return.
When we tested these the first time, I think they were really soft, and I wanted the stiffness between the 72 and the 3.5. Yeah.
When you find an individual that is willing to take the technology further, the engineers love it.
We soon discovered that I preferred running on a softer foot, and then From there on, we just had to optimise the shape of the sole, put a high-density foam in the beginning and then taper it out. I mean, it's a lot of man-hours to get 0.1 seconds off, but every small step counts, and the guys who are dedicated to pushing just for that hundredth of a second.
They may be only fractions of a second, but with a Formula One style team of engineers behind him, Oscar cannot escape the perception that he has a technological advantage over able-bodied runners.
There is this misunderstanding that there is an advantage to him with these. There is no way. No physical laws will allow you to gain more energy out of it than you can actually put in. Oscar still loses energy that he could put back into a biological leg. He has a disadvantage over everybody else.
But not everyone agrees. Whatever the case, Oscar's times are getting closer and closer to Olympic qualification. But out of the blue, in March 2007, the International Association of Athletics Federations, the IAAF, bans the use of technical aids in sprinting. Everyone interprets this as a specific ban on Oscar.
My manager phoned me one night and he told me that they'd put a new rule into place that I was banned from running on the international circuit.
But prosthetic blades have never been independently tested, so the IAAF cannot prove that they are a technical aid. For the time being, Oscar is free to compete, and in June 2007, he is given an opportunity to make history. He's been invited to race at the British Grand Prix in Sheffield, alongside the cream of world athletics, including Olympic 400-metre champion Jeremy Warriner.
Nervous? Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
It's a dry run of his Olympic dream. The fastest man on 2 legs against the fastest man on no legs. For the moment, the IAAF cannot stop him racing in Sheffield. A war of words has developed in the back pages of the newspapers. He arrives in Britain under a cloud of suspicion and doubt.
This huge thing with the IAAF been pretty frustrating for me because a lot of stuff's come out that's posed questions and doubts in people's minds about the prosthetics when there aren't any.
Oscar will be the first disabled runner ever to race against an Olympic champion.
The interest has been massive this last week, but I didn't really realise how big it was until we landed in England yesterday. It's just going to be a huge weekend. I'm actually pretty stressed out.
But all the press are interested in is his spat with the IAAF.
Obviously there's this ongoing row with the IAAF and things. Is that something you think will be resolved in your favour, or do you deep down think it's not going to?
Definitely. I mean, it's as you said, it's ongoing. We just want to work with the IAAF and kind of get this thing behind us.
But can you understand some of the negativity?
I can understand the negativity in a way, but I think it should be an innocence until proven guilty case, and not a guilty until proven innocent case. I'm willing to say that if they could ever find evidence that I would stop running, it's not something that I would want to compete at on a level like this if I knew I had an unfair advantage.
Ahead of the biggest race of his career, Oscar is under pressure as never before. The big question just won't go away.
Some people say that you have a bit of an unfair advantage with these legs.
And whether you get some sort of advantage by using these blades. Your legs aren't bionic, are they?
No, not at all.
But do you think you have any kind of advantage?
Having these would give you an unfair advantage.
I think it's pretty stupid to make a comment like that.
And on the morning of the race, the pressure increases.
Oh, shucks. This is not good. This is not good. Oh, we'll see. Hopefully it'll change by tonight, I guess. I hope so. Otherwise I'm in trouble.
It is the wettest British summer since records began. It's any athlete's nightmare, but Oscar knows that his blades perform particularly badly in these conditions.
I'd rather go hard out and slip than take it easy and play it safe kind of thing. But it's going to be a really hard race, I guess.
With no let-up in the weather, Oscar is facing an agonising choice. If he pulls out, he might never get this chance again. If he races, there is a danger he could humiliate himself and derail his quest to run at the Olympics. Oscar thrives on a challenge, but behind the scenes, the boy who always tried so hard to fit in is looking very much alone.
Just kind of been keeping my head low. It's been like a very new experience, and it's totally different to the Paralympic things, how they run. So, I mean, the guys here are really hardcore. It's different, you know. I've obviously got to learn a lot. So, let's see how it goes. Should be good. Whew. Gonna have fun. Gonna die out there, but that's fine.
Well, I think as a coach, he will have some thoughts flashing through his brain and say, maybe I'm insane to run tonight. Because it's raining, it's a little bit slippery. So, plus the two best in the world, so definitely a very hard race.
Despite the presence of a host of athletics stars, the biggest cheer of the night is reserved for Oscar.
It's a kind of huge mixture of emotions and feelings. When you're lining up for a race, you never want to do it. But I love the feeling that I have after the race. It kind of changes, you know, from a very negative to a very positive feeling in like 46 seconds.
After the first 100 meters, Oscar starts to fall behind. And then the gap widens. What was meant to be the introduction of Oscar Pistorius to the world of able-bodied athletics has turned into a spectacular failure. To make matters worse, he is disqualified for straying out of his lane. After the race, the world's press are not holding back.
There we go. Don't push, please. Thanks. What are we to make of how you did tonight?
Whatever you want to make of it.
What do you make of it?
Well, I've got a lot of training ahead of me that I've been doing pretty well as far.
The better you do, the more people are going to ask the question, why?
Well, then the more people should do the research as well.
They say the Paralympics exist for people like you. How do you answer that?
It does exist for people like me, but I think if I can cross the boundary, why not?
Okay, I'll have to call that again here, guys. Cheers, Oscar. Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Oscar returns to South Africa with his confidence severely dented. It seems his big chance to prove himself in Sheffield was cursed by the British weather. And with doubts about his prosthetics still lingering, it may prove to be the only chance he ever has. Even the South African media, previously so supportive, are beginning to doubt him.
On the news, they've been bringing it up quite regularly. But yesterday it was a little bit negative. It was just more like, you know, he needs to calm down and he needs to just understand the IAAF's decision. And yesterday I was a bit surprised at how negative it was. I didn't think it was going to be like that.
Oscar's season is now over. But at the end of the year, whilst other athletes rest, he will face the most important test of his career. The IAAF announces that it will fund independent tests on his prosthetics. At the German Sports University, his performance is to be measured over 2 days of grueling tests against 6 able-bodied athletes who all run similar times. Oscar is confident that they will prove he is at a disadvantage.
90% of the accusations that have come to the table have been things that aren't even true. You know, we're pretty positive that the outcome of these tests are going to be in my favour.
So what I'll do is I'll count back 3, 2, 1. Everything looks good. All systems clear.
If somebody's got their reservations about me running, I can just say, well, these are the tests that's been done, and these are the findings, you know, and say what you want, but this is scientific. It's not an opinion that somebody, your critics, have about you. It's a fact.
Whenever you are.
Okay, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, and go! Go, 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 go!
Supervising the proceedings is Dr. Elio Locatelli, the very IAAF official who first raised suspicions about Oscar.
I was a little bit suspicious about his performance in 400 meter because you know that he was finishing very, very quick.
Earlier in the year, Locatelli filmed Oscar racing and came to a startling conclusion. All runners tire as the race goes on, but Oscar is the only 400-meter runner in history to get faster.
Everything's good? Yeah. Okay. A 400-meter runner cannot run the second part of the race faster than the first. It is, quite impossible. For 100 meters, he did 12:86, that is very bad. Then he had from the 200 meters to 300 and 400. He can be compared to the world record owner, you know.
That's fine.
The data collected from the 400-meter run measures Oscar's fitness and lung capacity. If it is less than the able-bodied runners, then Oscar's blades may be making up the difference.
I'm feeling dizzy.
Dizzy?
Yeah.
Better?
Welcome back.
Everything Oscar does is being recorded by cameras from the IAAF. The only friendly face to offer any comfort to Oscar is his agent, Piet van Zyl.
It's like running through a forest, the backpack on your back, and then a spider comes down and grabs you in the face and is eating your face out whilst you're trying to run at 400. No, it was rough. Really, really rough. Yeah. But it's fine. It's finished now at least.
Yeah. Go, 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 go.
But for Oscar, the worst is far from over. Oscar Pistorius is staking his future as an athlete on a series of scientific tests in Cologne.
We want to know from a scientific point of view if running with a prosthetic foot has some biomechanical advantages or probably disadvantages.
Is it okay? That's perfect, yeah.
The Athletic Federation have to do the decisions. We produce the data and we produce a scientific report.
You want to see him from the back?
Yeah, and from that we can calculate the gluteus volume.
If it's proved that he gets an advantage from his prosthetics, Oscar will be banned from able-bodied races. His disastrous race at Sheffield could be his only experience of top-flight competition. Many believe that the International Association of Athletic Federations tried to ban Oscar earlier in the year. Their representative, who's been publicly critical of Oscar's fight to run, is here to supervise the test.
It's pretty much like being sexist or racist, where you're saying, you know, we don't want disabled people in sport. It's quite a lot at stake at the end of the day.
Oscar's legs have been fitted with reflective nodules, which will register his movement on infrared cameras. First, they have to be precisely calibrated.
And my wallet on Saint.
This is perhaps the most important test of the 2 days, to measure how much energy Oscar's blades return compared to a human leg. A pressure plate measures the impact as the blades land on it. The infrared and high-speed cameras record the movement, showing the degree of spring they provide. It's a comparison that has never been made before.
Quick. Yeah, no.
Okay, then, we tried. We cannot answer ethical, political, social questions in this area, but we try to give some answers on the scientific, medical and biomechanical questions. The other one?
It's okay from sitting to the other.
Despite this, Oscar leaves Germany maintaining his usual breezy optimism.
I don't see how it could go the other way. And to be honest, I haven't really put much thought into if it did, so I'm be pretty excited to see what the outcome is.
On January the 10th, the IAAF announces that the tests in Germany proved that Oscar gains a considerable advantage from his prosthetics. A human leg returns 60% of the energy put into it. Oscar's prosthetic returns 90%. Oscar is banned from competing in international able-bodied races. His dream of running at the Beijing Olympics is over.
At the moment, we're pretty, I'm trying to stay positive about it, and hopefully, I think they're going to be follow-up tests done in America. Obviously, it's a bit scary, a bit worrying, I guess, but I'm trying to stay positive about it. You dealt with the situation in life, and if you make the best of it, then, good for you. If you let it bring you down, then that's your problem. At the end of the day, nobody else is going to, really give a shit about it. If I had legs, I don't think I'd be this. I know I wouldn't be the same person I am today, and I'm happy with who I am. So, I'm happy with having artificial legs.
Next Wednesday at 9, we meet two sets of sisters who suffer from an extreme skin condition which is very painful and incurable. That's next week's Extraordinary People.